Deep Rock Galactic is a game pretty much about four space dwarves getting resources from company. That's pretty much the game in a nutshell. But Coffee Stain Studio made this game. You think since this game is made by the same creators as Goat Simulator, it'll be pretty mediocre. But this game actually shines. With great gameplay, lots of replayability, and comedy, this game is surprisingly good. Today, I'm going to talk about why Deep Rock Galactic is such a underrated game. Before we get into the gameplay, let me get you to speed with the four classes. For this section, I got the help of my other three friends to explain their main classes. If they have a Twitch or YouTube, it will all be linked in the description. The Engineer is my personal favorite class. His main primary is a shotgun, while his main secondary is a grenade launcher. The grenade launcher is very good for taking out crowds of enemies, and the shotgun is really good with single targets. Just like any shotgun in any game, the closer you are, the more projectiles hit, and the more damage you do. He also has a platform gun which, in its name, makes platforms. This is good for getting to places and traversing lands you can't normally. It has a few good uses as well, like you can make it so you barely take any fall damage on it, which is very useful. Or you can make it so no aliens can walk on it, making like a little barricade thing. You also have a choice between one or two sentry guns. This is pretty self-explanatory. The Engineer has 3 grenades. Each grenade gives you a different playstyle. You can use the decoy grenade if you want to distract the aliens and buy more time for your teammates. Or you can use the plasma burster for straight damage. Or you could equip the proximity mine for a landmine that detonates only when aliens walk over it. Good for blocking out choke points. Engineer also has a secondary primary gun, the electric SMG, my personal favorite primary. And he also has a secondary, the breach cutter. This thing is very beefy, it can shred armor off all monsters and have a very high base damage. Overall, the Engineer is a great choice if you like dealing damage and having good area control. He's a must-have on every team.
Hi, I'm Cody and I'm going to talk to you about the Gunner class. As a disclaimer, I am not an expert at this game and I do not claim to be. I just play the game for fun in my free time and I'm just going to talk about what I've noticed about my primary class, the Gunner. Out of all the classes, the Gunner class is basically the damage dealer, and his entire purpose is to just keep the group alive and kill all the enemies, and he is designed to take out large groups of enemies or heavy enemies with relative ease. The Gunner's primary weapons are the Lead Storm powered minigun and the Thunderhead heavy autocannon. The Lead Storm powered minigun is a minigun style weapon that instead of reloading overheats over time but pulls all of its ammo out of a single clip, I guess. The Lead Storm powered machine gun needs time to charge up before firing, but once it starts firing, it has incredibly high DPS and is really good at taking out single armored targets. The Thunderhead heavy autocannon, on the other hand, has clips like normal and does heavy damage, but is primarily focused on splash damage, so use this one for taking out large groups of smaller enemies. The Gunner's secondary weapons are the Bulldog heavy revolver and the BRT-7 burst fire gun. The Bulldog heavy revolver is a single-shot, high-damage, high-accuracy weapon. It holds low ammo, but is really good for sniping enemy weak points. The burst fire gun is, well, a burst fire gun that serves about the same purpose as the Bulldog heavy revolver. It is designed to do good damage to single targets at longer range, actually, surprisingly. It has pretty good accuracy. The Gunner's zipline launcher is their mobility item, which holds 4 shots and produces a permanent zipline, although having range and angle limitations. It is useful for making pathways to a place that you and your team will be visiting often. You may also fire while riding it, which will help you in combat situations. You can ride the zipline launcher up and down, although while going down you have a speed advantage. The shield generator is the gunner's support tool, and it creates a dome shield around the area it is placed. This shield lasts 6 seconds once placed, and you have 4 of them. The shield blocks incoming damage and causes all bugs to immediately leave the area like bug repellent. They also do not return to the area until the shield is down, but they may sit just outside of it. On top of this, all dwarves inside the shield have 50% damage resistance and instantly start regenerating their personal shield. The drawback, however, is that this shield has a cooldown period after use, so you cannot spam them. All around, the shield generator is a very useful tool that may save your life, so don't be afraid to use it to save yourself or a friend. To sum up the gunner, I'll give you some quick strengths and weaknesses about the class. Of the gunner's strengths, he has high damage and can survive a lot of attacks and waves on his own or with little help. The gunner is also very conservative of ammo, considering the damage output he does compared to other classes. As for weaknesses, I'll give you some tips of how to deal with your most common weaknesses. This one might be me, but I tend to find that as the gunner, since I can deal damage and I can survive large waves of enemies, I tend to stick around and shoot things longer than I have to. So basically what I'm saying is don't be the guy who's shooting Griffoids and stuff when all the rest of your team is over in the drop pod. Another tip from my experience is that later in the game, other classes actually do get really good weapons for like their second tier weapons. And some of them may even be better at certain specific tasks than you. Some examples are the driller's cryo gun, which can insta-kill all types of flying enemies by freezing them and dropping them out of the sky. Or the engineer's breach cutter, which is amazing at killing armored targets like the oppressor, and I literally don't know of any better way of killing them. The lesson here is just because you're the gunner doesn't mean you need to be the only one dealing damage, and you might want to let others take a turn sometimes. This pretty much sums up my experience with the gunner class in Deep Rock Galactic. I hope this can be helpful to some aspiring gunners out there, and hopefully we'll see you in the mines.
What's up, guys? I'm Ninjaja117, and Crusader here has asked me and the boys to do a bit on each of our respective dwarves, and so I've come to introduce my dwarf. I play the Driller. As his name suggests, the Driller focuses mainly on mining, but also has a great deal of area of effect weapons and abilities. The Driller I believe to be the simplest class in the game, as you don't have to trouble yourself with things like remembering pathways, finding exact locations, or even aiming. Which is why the Driller is the best class for monkey brains like myself. When you start out as the Driller, you'll have two starting weapons. Your primary is a flamethrower, which is exceptional at disposing of hordes of smaller enemies, but not as effective against the larger foes. Your secondary will be a tiny little pistol that does tiny little pistol things. If you've ever used a pistol in a video game, then you know what it does. But once you hit a certain level, you'll unlock a second primary and secondary. The second primary is the almighty cryo cannon, a heavy weapon that shoots a huge cloud of ice that freezes all in its path, allies included, so be careful. The second secondary is the experimental plasma launcher. It's pretty much just a plasma pistol from Halo. Now, for everyone who's never played Halo, first of all, what are you doing with your life? Second, the plasma pistol shoots small bullets and can be charged to shoot larger projectiles for more damage, and it does the same thing in Deep Rock. As for the other pieces of equipment, you have a few choices for grenades. You start with a throwing axe. You have about 8 of them. You can pick up ones you miss. The second's just a standard grenade. It blows up and makes things die. The third is a sort of gas bomb that bursts into flames when hit with a flamethrower. You also have a satchel charge that you can place and detonate for some beefy damage. It's good for crowd control. Now for the one piece of gear I have saved for last. The tool that gave the Driller his name. Not one, but 2 giant drill gauntlets that absolutely disintegrate almost anything. It's quite good for locating buried things like eggs or Jadis crystals, as it takes less time than just using the average pickaxe. One of my personal favorite uses is to just dig a tunnel from wherever you are to the drop pod, or allies if you get separated. Which is why I call it the monkey brain class, as if there's anything in your way, you don't have to think about how you'll get around it and just rev up those twin beefy boys and drill your way through. The Driller, I feel, isn't the most necessary class, but having one around does make things easier and can speed up certain processes. For example, the cryo cannon is useful for freezing larger targets, making them take more damage so the rest of the team can shred through it. I've already stated its uses in mining resources. Also, during the final wave of the Amoran Heartstone and escort missions, there'll be these orange crystals that appear and damage the drill. A driller is able to break those crystals with ease, allowing other members to deal with the swarm and fix the drill. Another tactic I recently learned is in the mission where you have to fix the robots, you can drill under one of the objectives, allowing the enemies to be funneled into a certain area, making them easier to kill. And the last one off the top of my head is during the mission with the pipes. A driller can make easy pathways for the pipes for speeding up the process. But sadly, nothing is perfect. Even the almighty driller has some weaknesses. For starters, you won't be leaving the ground much. If there's something on the roof of the cave, best to just let a scout or engineer deal with it. Another thing you have to watch out for is friendly fire. It is a thing in this game, and if you're not careful, all your crowd control methods will end up hurting your team. So just make sure you don't hit you guys too much, unless they have it coming, in which case, freeze them all you want. Overall, the driller's a pretty good class. It's got its weaknesses, but it more than makes up for it with efficiency and raw power. Truly a fine addition to the cast of dwarves that make up Deep Rock Galactic. That's all from me. Don't forget to check me out at Ninjaja117 on YouTube and Ninjaja117 on Twitch. Now on to the next dwarf.
Scout. It's a fairly simple class. You have your 4 weapons, your 2 utilities. Utilities consist of the grappling hook, which helps you get around places, shoots about 20-30 feet, recharge after every shot. Then the light gun, which shoots a magnesium core to light up the room. Primary weapons are an assault rifle, which is good for pretty much any situation. It's a typical assault rifle. The second is a sniper. No scope, but focused shot that does a good amount of damage, but takes 2 bullets in return. As secondaries, there's a double barrel shotgun. It deals out pretty good damage. It's good for crowd control. Then there is the dual SMGs. They're fast fire, good for taking out bigger things with paired with the sniper. Not super great with crowd control, but it works. What the scout does to help the team out is it can go up to the places where the rest of the team can't. Especially paired with the engineer, the scout can be very useful. Engineer placed the platform underneath minerals or something, the scout can go up and grab it. The rest of the team can also be very helpful to the scout, especially when the scout is in a pinch, goes to find a fossil on the roof, and he's stuck on the roof with like a 50-foot drop. The rest of your team can just sit underneath you and you can fall on their head, bounce, take no fall damage. The scout's light also does damage to enemies. So if you're really in a pinch, out of ammo, you can use that to kill a few things. Doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but it kills a grunt eventually. Other ways that the scout can help the team out is scouting ahead throughout the caves to find where everything's at, to map out the different tunnels so it's on your little mini map, and just to scout out ahead, see what's all ahead, see if there's a gus to kill you. The scout is my favorite class, hands down. I love jumping around from here to there, wherever. It reminds me of one of my favorite superhero, Spider-Man. It's super fun just being able to run around, kill things with pretty decent damage, and then just be able to run away and leave it up to the rest of the gang. Or sitting up top in the rooftops, shooting down above, giving them air support, which can be very useful, especially in higher level hazards. The scout's a maneuverable character. Based off of that, can do some damage. It's just overall enjoyable. I hope you enjoyed my TED Talk. Have a good day.
The gameplay is pretty simple but very good. You start off in a hub world. To start a mission, you need to look at the table and pick between 10 biomes they offer. Since caves are always randomly generated, no one cave ever feels the same. Each biome is very unique with their own perks and downsides. For example, the dense biozone is a blue pinkish biome with hugely huge caves as their generation. These can be a pain to maneuver if you're less agile class like the gunner or driller. My favorite biome, the radio exclusion zone, is full of green radioactive crystals that if you get too close these things will start to hurt you. A good example of this as well is the newest biome, the Hallow Bog. This biome resembles a giant tree and is full of spiky vines. They can retract into the ground while other vines will actually try and stab you. This makes the biome a very dangerous one. Each biome also has two main resources in it. One of them will be more common than the other. Once you pick your biome, you have an option of 7 missions. They consist of miner missions, where your main objective is to mine morkite, egg hunt missions, which have you go around breaking alien nests and stealing their eggs, on-site refining, which has you set up 3 pipes and extract liquid morkite, salvage operations, which have you repair mini mules, then you have to rebuild a satellite so they could find the pod's location and evac them. Port extraction has you mine blue crystals from the wall and put them in a refinery. Escort duty has you escort a giant jewel to a hardstone, which it then breaks open and you retrieve the core. And elimination missions, which consist of you killing giant aliens known as dreadnoughts. Already, there's a bunch of replayability with all these biomes and missions. When you're in the mission, you get dropped off in the drop pod. Once there, you do the main objective while looking for valuable resources. If you want a little extra cash and XP, then you can do the secondary missions. Occasionally, the game will throw a swarm at you, which will spawn a bunch of aliens. Once you do the objective, you have about 5 minutes to return to the pod, or it will leave without you and fail the mission. Even though missions seem basic, they really aren't, with random cave generations mixed with the random special aliens that they may spawn. It has a lot of replayability. There's also some little things you could find in some missions. There are battery packs, which give you a random weapon and player skin, an old helmet, which gives you a pickaxe piece or a random thing for the player. There are also machine events. Once you promote your dwarf, you can use these machine events and will give you overclocks if you successfully do them. If you want more of a challenge, then you can raise the difficulty. There are 5 levels of difficulty. The higher up you pick, the more teamwork and strategic strategies you gotta use to succeed. This mode can be pretty fun if you're in a team that has good communication. Difficulty 5 or and even 4 is definitely played best while in a call with some people you know so you can communicate and strategize together. Some missions will even have an upside and or a downside. These can make the missions easier, harder, and or just give you a bunch of XP or gold. Some downsides can be more cave leeches, stronger enemies, low oxygen, shield disruption, and one of the more annoying ones in my opinion, the haunted cave. This one is a constant invisible, strong, but slow ghost. These, can, these things can really get in your way for certain missions like on-site refinery. Doing any missions with downsides will provide you with an extra XP multiplier. Doing easier downsides are a great way to level up your character fast. Upsides are also very good. Some of them can give straight gold XP bonuses, and some will give you super fast speed or low gravity. Upsides are mostly fun and very awesome to have on any mission. The hub world is small with a few things to do. You basically have all the necessaries. There's a bench to upgrade your joints and weapons, a pickaxe bench to customize your pickaxe, an assignment board for, well, assignments. There's the map table, player customization locker, and the store for buying those player customizations. There's also a bar where you could buy booze, which can give you buffs for the next mission. Once you promote your dwarf, you gain access to the forge, which lets you have the ability to craft overclocks. These things can give your gun a big upside and maybe a downside as well. For example, you can make it so Engineer's grenade launcher has an ability to shoot like a giant nuke projectile, which does like massive area damage. You also gain access to the deep dive bench, which lets you do deep dives. Deep dives are 3-stage missions which have you do assignments on a mandatory difficulty 4. These are very strategic since if you die once, you have to restart the whole deep dive. But completing them give you blank miniature cores, which are good for machine events and random overclocks. Deep Rock Galactic has a good amount of enemies. They are all diverse and have weak spots you can take advantage to gain the upper hand. There are 6 types of creatures. The first one is the Glyphid class. They range from Glyphid grunts to tanks to whole giant bosses. Your basic alien, the Glyphid grunt, is not strong by itself, but they can easily swarm you if you don't deal with them. They have different versions like the heavier armored one or the slasher one which does a lot more damage. There are also tanks of the classic Praetorians, which have a giant green ball behind them, which is a weak spot. Same can go for the Oppressor, which is a beefier version of the Praetorian. You can exploit this to your advantage. There's also Glyphid Dreadnoughts, which are the huge bosses which takes major firepower to deal with. They come with 3 types and all need to be focus fired because they all deal major damage and have major health. Mech Terrors are another alien type. They mostly consist of flying type bugs. They usually fly and are easily dealt with, especially with the Driller's cryo gun. Most of them are not really a threat, unless it's either a Tri-Jaw or a Grabber. Even the Goo Bomber can be bad if it's in a swarm. These bugs are mostly annoying when in the crowd, but you shouldn't worry too much unless they start to overswarm you. Nadokites, I think that's how it says. I'm not exactly too sure. I mean, shit. I ain't a professional pronouncing alien names. They are pretty much electric flying jellyfishes. They're easy to kill, but a real pain when they're in a crowd. Again, the Driller's flamethrower slash cryo gun are very good against these enemies. Nadokite breeders are flying aliens that spawn eggs, which will hatch into hatchlings. When the hatchlings are killed, they spawn 5 normal Nadokites. These things can really get out of hand, so if you don't deal with them fast enough, it's game over. Me and my pals learned this the hard way. You do not want to leave the breeders alone for too long. So definitely focus fire on them when you can. The other 3 types of enemies consist of passive enemies, like the almighty holy loot bug. Please don't kill him, man, they're just vibing. Stationary targets, like the Spitball Effector or the Nexus Brood, and extra ones like the Kronar and the 2 other bosses, Corlock Tyrant Reed, which is well a giant plant, and the 2 Xenon Charge Suckers, which took control of a giant meal with a big gun. The fact that this game has so much good and diverse enemies makes each cave encounter a lot more different. For one cave you might get lots of glyphids, while the next one may consist of nanokite spawners, glyphids, and some stationary targets. This adds a lot more replayability and makes the game so much more fun to play. Fun facts: the game has 4 extra secret minerals. There's gold that comes in the form of giant crystal, a funky cube which serves no purpose but to be a collectible item, bitter gems which are giant pink gems which give you extra gold, and tyrant shots which drop from the plant boss. I think these give golden XP, I'm not exactly too sure, so if you know, let me know in the comments. In in missions, you have a chance to find cargo crates and lost packs in any caves. These things can give cool weapons and pickaxe skins. The planet you're on Hawks 4 has the most mineral and biome distribution, but is one of the most hostile planets in the solar system. No mining company dares to mine there, but your cheap ass company decides, yep, we're gonna mine on this hostile planet. You already know I had to throw this in. Coffee Stain Studio made an old time awesome reference, referencing the almighty band Motorhead. Like, come on, dude. They're such a legendary band. My respects for Coffee Stain went up high. So, that's Deep Rock Galactic. You should definitely try this game out, especially if you have friends to play with it. It is so much better to just hop on with your boys and just play this game. I'm telling you, it's a good experience. It's one of the best multiplayer experiences, and it's an absolute blast to play. I advise you to try out all of the classes and maybe promote them. Make sure to subscribe and like the video, and remember, rock and stone, brothers.